All right, so today we're really diving deep into the world of INTJs.
Mm-hmm.
You've sent over some really fascinating articles about them. True You Journal, 16 Personalities, even Personality Junkie.
Oh, excellent sources.
So it seems like you're really on a mission to decode the INTJ mind.
Definitely.
And we're here to help.
Now, it's a fascinating mission because INTJs can be quite paradoxical. They're often described as these walking encyclopedias.
Oh, absolutely. Like 1 minute they're strategizing world domination, and the next they're obsessing over a misplaced comma.
Yes.
So
there's a lot more to them than just facts and figures.
Okay, so to kick things off, let's clarify what is an INTJ.
Right.
You keep hearing his acronym.
Sure.
But what makes them tick?
So at their core, INTJs are defined by their 4 core preferences: introversion, intuition, thinking, and judging. That's what that INTJ stands for. But when you see those preferences play out in real life, you get individuals who are incredibly analytical, strategic, and driven by a deep-seated need to understand how things work. They're not just about observing the world, they're constantly analyzing it, looking for patterns, and figuring out how to make things better.
Okay, so that explains the whole walking encyclopedia thing. But there's also this creative, almost visionary side to them, right? I mean, the architect is one of their nicknames.
Yes.
That has to involve some serious imagination.
Absolutely. It's like they have this mental chessboard where they're constantly playing out different scenarios, anticipating every move and countermove. And this isn't just about planning their next grocery list. This is about understanding the bigger picture, the underlying systems and structures that govern everything from their personal lives to, well, maybe even world domination.
And speaking of chessboards, the 16 Personalities article had this great analogy about how INTJs see the world as one giant game of strategy. It got me thinking, how does this play out in their everyday lives? Are we talking like color-coded sock drawers and perfectly optimized morning routines?
Yeah. Well, some INTJs might be into that. But on a more fundamental level, their strategic thinking influences everything from their career choices to their relationships. They're drawn to complexity, to challenges that require them to really use their brains.
Right.
And they're not afraid to put in the effort to achieve their goals. In fact, they thrive on it.
Okay, so it's not just about having a plan. It's about having a plan for the plan and then a backup plan just in case the first two go haywire.
Exactly. They're always thinking several steps ahead, anticipating obstacles, and considering all the possibilities.
Right.
It's what allows them to be so effective in whatever they set their minds to.
Which brings us to what might seem like a contradiction. INTJs are highly intuitive, but also incredibly logical.
Right.
It's like, are they dreamers or are they realists? How do those two sides coexist?
It's a great question, and it gets to the heart of how INTJs process information. You see, we all have these mental functions: intuition, thinking, feeling, and sensing, and they can be either introverted, focused inward, or extroverted, focused outward. For INTJs, their dominant function, the one that really drives their thinking, is introverted intuition, or NI for short.
So NI is like their secret weapon.
Yes.
The source of those aha moments where they seem to just know things before anyone else.
Precisely. NI is constantly gathering information from the environment, even if the INTJ isn't consciously aware of it. Then it processes that information, searching for patterns, connections, and potential outcomes. That's why INTJs often have these incredible insights that seem to come out of nowhere. They're dying. NI has been working behind the scenes all along, connecting the dots.
And you know what's fascinating to me is that the Personality Junkie article mentioned how, for INTJs, intuition is actually their most conscious function. That seems kind of counterintuitive. Like, how can intuition be conscious?
Right. It's easy to think of intuition as this mystical, unconscious thing. But for INTJs, because NI's their dominant function, they're much more aware of its workings than other types.
Okay.
It's like they have this inner compass that's always guiding them.
Right.
Even if they can't always explain how they know what they know.
So if I suddenly get a strong feeling about something, or I see a pattern that others are missing, that's my own NI trying to get my attention.
It could very well be. We all have that intuitive ability to some degree. But for INTJs, it's their primary mode of operation.
Wow.
Now, NI is the visionary, but it needs a partner in crime, and that's where extroverted thinking, or TE, comes in.
Okay.
This is their secondary function, and it's all about logic, efficiency, and bringing order to the outside world.
So if NI is the architect dreaming up the blueprints, T is the construction manager making sure those plans become a reality.
You got it. T takes those NI's insights, those big picture visions, and translates them into concrete plans and actions. It's what gives INTJs their reputation for being organized, strategic, and incredibly effective problem solvers.
It's like they can see the forest and the trees, and they're not afraid to get their hands dirty planting or chopping as needed. But, okay, we've talked about intuition and thinking. But what about feelings?
Right.
Aren't INTJs supposed to be like emotionally challenged robots or something?
Yes, the emotionless robot stereotype. It's one we hear a lot, but it's really not accurate.
Okay.
INTJs do have feelings. In fact, their third function, introverted feeling, or phi, plays a significant role in their inner lives.
So they're not robots after all.
Yeah.
But if they have this phi thing going on, why do they have such a reputation for being aloof or unemotional?
It's because phi is introverted.
Okay.
Their emotional world is very rich and nuanced, but it's mostly directed inward.
Yeah.
They don't feel the need to broadcast their emotions or seek external validation for them.
So it's not that they don't have feelings, it's that they experience them very privately.
Exactly. And this can make them seem guarded or even cold to those who don't know them well. But for those lucky few who are let into their inner circle, the INTJ's capacity for loyalty, empathy, and deep, meaningful connection is truly something special.
Okay, so now we're seeing another layer of the INTJ paradox. They might come across as stoic, but beneath the surface, there's this whole world of feeling and depth. It's like an iceberg. You only see a fraction of what's really there.
Right.
And speaking of things hidden beneath the surface, the Personality Junkie article mentioned something called the inferior function, which for INTJs is extroverted sensing, or say.
Yes.
What's that all about?
Yes, the inferior function.
Yeah.
This is where things can get a little tricky for INTJs.
Okay.
While their dominant knee is all about abstract thinking and future possibilities, say is all about experiencing the here and now through the five senses.
Okay.
It's about being present in the moment, enjoying the physical world, the concrete details.
And because it's their inferior function, it's not something that comes naturally to them.
Right. It's like a muscle they haven't fully developed. But they might even feel a bit uncomfortable or awkward when they have to rely on their say.
So it's like that friend who drags you to a dance club when you'd rather be home reading a book.
Yes.
It's not that you can't dance, it's just not your preferred environment.
Precisely. And this tension between knee and say can manifest in some interesting ways. For example, it can contribute to their tendency towards perfectionism.
Oh, right. The INTJ perfectionism. It's practically legendary. The Personality Junkie article even had that anecdote about the INTJ who spent a month agonizing over a tiny bullet point in an email newsletter. It's funny, but also kind of relatable. Who hasn't obsessed over a tiny detail?
And that's the thing. We all experience this nicey dynamic to some extent.
Right.
We have our ideals, our visions of how things should be. That's our knee talking. And then we have the messy, unpredictable reality of the outside world. That's say.
Right.
But for INTJs, because knee is so dominant, that gap between the ideal and the real can feel especially pronounced.
So they have this crystal clear vision in their head, thanks to knee. And then C comes along and is all like, hey, remember that thing called reality? It's messy and imperfect.
Exactly. And this is where their tesh often kicks in to try and bridge that gap, to impose some order on the chaos.
Which is why they're such good planners and strategizers.
Yeah.
They're trying to bring that need vision to life in a way that actually works in the real world.
Precisely. And you know, this struggle with perfectionism isn't just about being a neat freak or wanting everything to be just so.
Right.
It's rooted in a deep desire to do things well, to live up to their own high standards.
Which makes sense, given everything we've learned about them so far. They're driven, they're insightful, they see things that others don't. So it's not surprising that they hold themselves to a pretty high bar.
And this drive for excellence can be an incredible asset in the right context.
Right.
It's what fuels their creativity, their problem-solving abilities, their ability to make a real impact in the world. But of course, like any strength, it can also be a double-edged sword.
Because if they're not careful, that drive for perfection can lead to burnout, frustration, and maybe even a few too many late nights agonizing over bullet points.
Exactly. Finding that balance between striving for excellence and accepting the inevitability of imperfection is a key part of the INTJ's journey.
It's like they're learning to be the master of their own minds, which, when you think about it, is a pretty fitting challenge for the mastermind personality type, wouldn't you say?
Indeed. And, you know, this balancing act extends to their relationships as well.
Oh, right.
After all, other humans are arguably the most complex, unpredictable systems of all.
Which is a perfect segue into our next chapter. All right, let's talk relationships. What do the articles have to say about INTJs and their approach to love, friendship, and all that messy human stuff? So we've talked about INTJs as masterminds.
Right.
But what about their hearts? The Very Well Mind article hinted that INTJs might be drawn to certain personality types more than others. Is there a secret decoder ring for INTJ relationships?
It's not quite as simple as a decoder ring, thankfully. Imagine trying to carry that around.
Right.
But there are some intriguing patterns.
Yeah.
Because INTJs thrive on intellectual connection.
Right.
They tend to gravitate toward partners who can keep up with their mental acrobatics.
Someone who can hold their own in a debate about quantum physics or the meaning of life?
Exactly. Think ENFPs with their boundless curiosity.
Okay.
Or ENTPs with their love for a good intellectual sparring match. Even ESTPs with their grounded, action-oriented approach can create a dynamic where both partners challenge and inspire each other.
So a meeting of the minds is a must-have for INTJs.
Definitely.
But what about those types that might require a bit more effort to connect with?
The sources did mention that relationships with ISFPs, ISFJs, and ESFJs can be more challenging for INTJs.
Is it game over if an INTJ falls for someone with one of those types?
Not at all. It just highlights the importance of understanding and appreciating those fundamental differences with any relationship. Communication and empathy are key. But that's especially true when you have two people wired in such different ways.
So maybe a little less debating the finer points of string theory and a little more focusing on shared values and emotional connection.
Now you're getting it. But let's not forget, INTJs bring their own unique brand of magic to relationships.
Okay.
They might not be the most outwardly affectionate, but their loyalty runs deep.
Right.
Once they let you into their inner circle, you're in for life.
It's quality over quantity when it comes to an INTJ's affections.
Precisely. They're not about spreading themselves thin. They'd rather invest their time and energy into a select few meaningful relationships.
Wow.
Which, when you think about it, is incredibly valuable in a world that often prioritizes superficial connections.
It's like that saying, fewer things better.
Yeah.
And speaking of things that INTJs value, the Very Well Mind article also delved into careers.
Yes.
What kind of work environments do they typically thrive in?
INTJs are naturally drawn to fields where they can put those powerful minds to good use.
Right.
Think science, engineering, technology, even law. These are areas that allow them to dive deep into complex problems, strategize solutions, and constantly be learning and growing.
Makes sense. But it's not just about being smart, right? There's also this drive, this ambition to make a real impact.
Absolutely. And the sources give some great examples of famous INTJs who embody this. Alan Greenspan, the economist, Stephen Hawking, the physicist, even fictional characters like Gandalf from Lord of the Rings.
Wow.
What connects them is this unwavering dedication to understanding how things work and then using that knowledge to make a difference.
It's like their work isn't just a job, it's a calling, a mission to unravel the mysteries of the universe.
Exactly. And that drive, that passion is what makes INTJs such fascinating and inspiring individuals.
Right.
They remind us that it's okay to be intellectually curious, to question everything, and to never stop searching for deeper meaning.
It's like they're showing us that being a mastermind isn't about having all the answers.
Right.
It's about being brave enough to ask the really big questions.
And to never stop learning, growing, and evolving. Because for an INTJ, the journey is just as important as the destination, if not more so.
Wow. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of the INTJ mind today.
We have.
There's so much more to explore.
There truly is. But hopefully this deep dive has given you a solid foundation for understanding this complex and often misunderstood personality type.
It really has. And, it's got me thinking, if these are just a few insights into one personality type, imagine the depth and wonder hidden within each of us. What a world we live in. That's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us, and remember, there's always more to discover.